In our today's lesson, we are going to be looking at Economics Paper 1, November 2024, and we're specifically focusing on 1.2, which is matching items. The request says choose a description from column B that matches the item in column A. Write only the letter A to I next to the question numbers 1.2.1 to 1.2.8 in the answer book. And you've been provided an example to say, e.g., 1.2.9, and the answer is J. So, what is important for you to understand here? You are only going to be returning the letter. So, what does that mean? It means that you are not going to be providing the full description that we have in column B. However, we are only going to provide the letter, and the letter can be A to I. Now, let us look at what we have in column A so that we can be able to match with column B. Looking at column A, 1.2.1, factor cost. What is a factor cost? A factor cost is amount paid to the resources used to produce goods and services. So the amount that the manufacturers they pay for the resources to produce the goods or deliver services is what is called factor cost. Now we need to look at column B and see where is the description that describes the amount paid for resources to produce goods or services. If we're looking at A, it's not correct. B, it's not correct. C, it's not correct. D, it's not correct. E, not correct. And when we're looking at F closely, it says amount paid for the resources used to produce goods and services. Therefore, this is the correct answer for A. So the correct answer for the factor cost, it is therefore F. Now, moving to 1.2.2, the moving average. First, you need to understand what is a moving average. A moving average is basically a method used to smooth out short-term fluctuation in the series of data. So, any series of data where the fluctuation needs to be smoothened, they need to use the method called the moving average. Now, we need to look at column B and see where they talk about the method. And if you find that, then you need to read in full. Now, when you look at A, there's nothing that talks about the method. And when you're looking at B, there's nothing that talks about method. And when you're looking at C, there's nothing that speaks of a method. And when we're looking at D, they talk about method, right? So now, before we can even say D is the correct answer, we need to read D in full. This is method used to predict the unknown using factors that are known. So now it is not correct because we know that this method is to smooth out short-term fluctuation. Therefore, D is also not correct. If we're looking at E, it's not the method. And if we're looking at F, it's not the method. And we're looking at G closely, it says method used to smooth out the short-term fluctuation in the time series data. Now, that means 1.2.2 is therefore G, because G says it's a method used to smooth out short-term fluctuation in the time series data. Therefore, our correct answer in this case for 1.2.2 will be G. Then when you look at 1.2.3, medium term expenditure framework. So what is a medium term expenditure framework? It is a 3-year rolling expenditure and revenue projection for the government. Right? So now when we're looking at column B, we need to look at anything that talk about 3-year rolling expenditure or even just 3-year, and then we can read it in full. If we're looking at A, it says a 3-year rolling expenditure and the revenue projection for the government. But you looking at the 3-year and rolling expenditure and the revenue projection for the government, then you can confirm that the correct answer for 1.2.3, it is A. Because A says it's a 3-year rolling expenditure and the revenue projection for the government. So the government, they use a 3-year rolling expenditure and revenue projection through medium-term expenditure framework. So this is the framework they use with 3-year rolling expenditure and revenue projection for the government. Now, 1.2.4 special drawing right. What is a special drawing right? You need to understand what is it before we look at column B. What will be the signal for us to read further? So when you're looking at the special drawing right, it is a form of credit granted by the National Monetary Fund for countries that experience balance of payment deficit. So now when we are looking at the column B, what are we going to be looking for? We are going to be looking for credit granted. We can look at International Monetary Fund. Now let us look. Do we see anything that talks about credit granted or monetary fund? Looking at A, there's nothing. Looking at B, if we look closer, we can see credit granted. We can see monetary fund. Therefore, we need to read it further. B says a form of credit granted by the International Monetary Fund to countries that experience a balance of payment deficit. Yes. Then the correct answer for special drawing right, it is B, because B says it is a form of credit granted by the International Monetary Fund to countries that experience the balance of payments. Then 1.2.5 boycott. What is boycott? You need to understand what is boycott. Then we can look at column B and see what will be the signals that we will use. So basically, boycott, it is a voluntary measures taken not to trade with certain country. So country may sit down and say trading with Nigeria is not beneficial for the country, or temporarily it's not beneficial, and they might decide that they need to take voluntary measures not to trade with Nigeria for the time being. And by doing so, it's called boycott, or you'll be saying they are boycotting Nigeria. Now we need to look for anything that talks about country, and then we'll read further. If you're looking at A, there's nothing that speaks of country. If you're looking at B, nothing that speaks of country. And if you're looking at C, there's nothing that speaks of country. Looking at D, there's nothing that speaks of country. Looking at E, nothing that speaks about country. If you're looking at F, there's nothing that speaks about country. If we look at G, we also can't see anything that talks about country. And if we look at H, there's also nothing. But if you're looking at I, it says voluntary measures taken not to trade with certain country, because you can see the country and you can see the voluntary measures as well. So now that means the correct answer for 1.2.5, it is I. And the reason we're saying it's I, because we know that boycott, it is what we normally call a voluntary measures taken not to trade with certain countries, right? Now we've read that, and then we're moving to 1.2.6. What is National Development Plan? You need to understand what is it that is called National Development Plan. So looking at National Development Plan, a National Development Plan, it's aimed to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality, right? So it is an initiative that's aimed to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality. And it has a period by when it should be reached. And they said by 2030. So the aim is that this plan, everything that is written there will be achieved by 2030. So as we are sitting in 2025, we have 5 years to make sure that is attained. Now, let us look at anything that talks about poverty or inequality. And that will mean we need to read further on that. If we're looking at A, there's nothing that talks about poverty or inequality. Looking at B, we can't find anything that talk about poverty, inequality. But if we're looking at C, there is poverty and there is inequality. And it says aim to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality by 2030. Then that means that is the correct answer. So now we know by now the correct answer is C for 1.2.6. National Development Plan, it aims to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality by 2030. So now we know the answer. And then 1.2.7, Special Development Initiative. What is that? It's aimed to attract infrastructure and investment in neglected and underdeveloped areas. So obviously, when it comes to investment and development, there are areas that the investors and developers they do not even go there because they feel like they're too underdeveloped for them to even take it into consideration. Right. So now the development initiative, the special development initiative, it's aimed to ensure that those areas they are attractive for the development investors to go to. Right. Now, what we're going to be looking for, we're going to be looking for infrastructure and investment. Anything that has infrastructure or investment, we're going to read it further. Looking at A, no infrastructure, no investment. Looking at B, nothing about infrastructure, investment. And we've already selected those questions. Looking at this one, no infrastructure, investment, and we've already selected it. D, a method used to predict unknown using facts that are known and unknown. It is not because we can't see investment or infrastructure. But when you're looking at E, it says attracts infrastructure and investment to neglected and underdeveloped areas. So this is the correct answer because we know that special development initiatives it's aimed to attract infrastructure and investment to neglected and underdeveloped areas. Therefore, the correct answer for 1.2.7 will be E. Now, but let's just look at 1.2.8 urbanization. What is urbanization? Urbanization is basically a process of moving people from rural areas to the cities or town. So it's where people are taken from areas that are underdeveloped to areas that are a little bit developed. That is urbanization. So what are we going to be looking at? Rural or towns? If you see anything that talks about rural or towns, then you're going to select it. Now, just while we're on the screen, when you're looking at Asia, it says the process of the movement of people from rural areas to the cities and towns. Yes, now the answer for urbanization, which is 1.2.8, will be H. That takes us to the end of matching items, which is matching column A with column B. In the next video, we're going to be looking at give the terms. So we'll be looking at give the terms and we'll explain give the terms further in the separate video. Thank you so much for listening up until this far. All the best for your exam and enjoy.